Hi guys, and welcome back to my walkthrough of the OCR specification. Still focusing on microeconomics, and today we are looking at this particular criterion from the A-level spec. Explain. Remember, scratch the surface, understanding. Directive word. With the aid of a diagram, numerous diagrams that we can use, the different values of PES. As you will well know, I'm sure, that is price elasticity of supply. So, without further ado, let's jump straight into this. So, price elasticity of supply equation, very important that you know this, could be on a multiple choice or an introductory question on the micro paper. Equation is percentage change in quantity supplied divided by the percentage change in price. So if you have difficulty with calculating percentage changes, it might be in your best interests to have a little practice of that. But what is it actually measuring? Well, it's measuring the responsiveness of quantity supplied to a change in price. Now, if you have already looked at my PED videos, then hopefully this will just be a sort of turn your attention and focus from demand to supply, because the basic principles are the same. So, if it's looking at the responsiveness of quantity supplied to change in price, let's think about way back to the beginning of maybe your A-level studies of economics or GCSE, when we looked at the demand curve sloping downwards from left to right and the supply curve upwards from left to right. And one of the reasons the supply curve slopes upwards from left to right is that firms are more willing to supply said good or service if they are receiving a higher price. And as a consequence of that, we have this well-known supply curve which slopes upwards from left to right, giving us this positive relationship. As price goes up, quantity supplied is also increasing. P1 up to P2, Q1 up to Q2. So the outcome of your PES equation will always be positive. Now remember, when we looked at PED, the outcome was negative, so we're usually talking about positive relationship here. And again, we can refer back to these same measures when we're determining is it elastic, inelastic, unitary, perfectly elastic, or perfectly inelastic. So if it's greater than 1, it's elastic, less than 1, it's inelastic, equal to 1, unitary. Infinity is perfectly elastic and 0 is perfectly inelastic. Again, nothing new there with regard to and in comparison to what we looked at on price elasticity of demand. But I suppose the thing that we've got to think about is, well, is it easy for a firm, even if price goes up, is it easy for them to respond quickly and to increase their output overnight or instantaneously? Or is there a much longer lead time required? So if I were, for example, growing Christmas trees and it's 24th of December and I had a mad rush for the 25th, well, I cannot simply magic out of nowhere tens of thousands of new Christmas trees. And so in that case, even though price rises, I am unable to meet that increase in supply. I just cannot do it, at least not in the short term. So we have this long-term, short-term bias going on here with regard to price elasticity of supply. As I've mentioned here, however, the speed with which new or additional output can be produced is variables. Thinking of Adam Smith's pin factory, so if there was a run on pins, could we produce more pins? Of course we could. Adam Smith went from producing 200 in a day to 4,000 something in a day, back in a couple of centuries. So even then, you could increase your pins. However, houses, would house builders be able to magically just produce very, very quickly lots of new houses if there was a sudden influx of demand? Well, no, there's a certain lead time required. And so that's a very important element and thing to consider when you are discussing and thinking about price elasticity of supply. So I've got a few examples here, a few diagrams, and we'll add one or two as well just to finish. So here we have our SI, so this is our very inelastic supply. Now remember, just thinking about your equation, inelastic supply the outcome is less than 1. So in terms of our equation, in order to get an outcome less than 1, it would have to be the case that the price, the bottom line here, will be rising much faster than the quantity supplied, if your outcome of that equation is less than 1. And so, if you think about it in those terms, it's quite easy then to visualize the change. So we've got significant rise in price here, P1 up to P2, but a relatively small increase in quantity supplied. So this is very inelastic, and so in spite of the fact that price has gone up quite significantly, there has not been a substantive increase in quantity supplied. And that may be because of these short-term, long-term production lead time type of issues that I have mentioned already. What about a more elastic supply curve? Well, remember, elastic is greater than 1, so that will mean that the top line of our equation, quantity supplied, is rising faster than the bottom line. That has to be the case if the outcome of that equation is going to be greater than 1. And so consequently, we have this type of relationship where we have a relatively small change in price, but a much larger increase in the quantity supplied. So we get this relatively flat line, SE, for elastic. And that would be maybe for the likes of something very simple, manufacturing pins, whereby it's very easy to just increase your output from one day to the next. So what about special cases? Well, let's talk about, and probably the most commonly assessed one, I suppose, would be maybe the whole notion of capacity. So it could be capacity in the NHS in terms of, if you're looking at healthcare economics, or here I'm talking about capacity in football stadia. So if I take the local team here, Newcastle United, capacity 52,000, and it's fixed at 52,000. So it doesn't matter whether somebody's willing to pay nothing or £20 million for a ticket, it's not possible to suddenly increase the number of seats in the stadium. And so it's fixed at 52,000. Hence the supply is perfectly inelastic. Now, of course, they might be able to put a seat somewhere just to accommodate one person, but generally speaking, they cannot increase in substantive numbers the quantity of seats. So you get this inelastic supply curve. So that's a very common one for that type of question. Also for supply of hospital beds, for example, also considered to be very inelastic. That leads to the problem whereby you've got demand intersecting here and you get this shortage. Those of you who get subscribed to Economics Today, by the way, great article on that in this quarterly Economics Today. And then what about the other special cases? So perfectly elastic will of course be COMSA. So the implication here is that you can supply as much of the good as you want at a given and going price. Now, I suppose if you're thinking of maybe some commodities, they might come close to that, but you'll struggle to find anything really which comes too close to that. And then the other special case is your unitary, whereby you've got a sort of 45-degree line relationship going on here, whereby the percentage change in quantity supplied is always the same as the percentage change in price. And very rarely reference that specifically, unless it's in a multiple choice question. You're more likely to see these referenced within questions, say for larger essays or extended answer questions. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I think that's about it on this particular criterion. So if this is your first time watching right to the end, thank you very much. If you're a subscriber, thank you. If you're not a subscriber, why not? Hit the subscribe button, click the alerts bell. Also follow me on Instagram, G_economics, Twitter, G_economics, LinkedIn, G_economics, and find out all the latest goings on, put my teeth in, with Geconomics at geconomics.co.uk/events. Thank you, bye for now.